I said to myself, you know what? I can't do this alone. This is actually really hard. Life is not meant to be done alone for real. It's true that we need community, but then I realized that I also need God. I knew who God was through other people before. I didn't know him for myself, and so I realized that, you know what, that's the thing that's missing. That is really the big thing that I need to work on, my faith, my spiritual maturity. And so that's pretty much where it started for me, where it properly started, and the transition became even more serious. And I had to come face to face with many things that I had been running away from, that I didn't know existed, that I didn't know I needed to work on even. And you know what? It all came to the surface. And like I said, as I went deeper into reading the Bible and really understanding what God is asking of me, the understanding part was also really, really difficult. But I realized that it's not optional. The thing with obedience, it's not something that you can choose, tick a box, not today, maybe later. It's, I'm going to do it. I'm going there whether I like it or not, whether I feel like it or not. Hi, community. Welcome back to A Cupful. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. Oh my goodness me. I am in the best mood ever. It is the first week of September and it's nice and warm and the sun is out. Of course, it is so beautiful outside. You can hear the birds chirping. It's spring. We're in a new season. And of course, in this kind of weather, as you have heard many a times on this podcast, that I absolutely love just the warmth. I love spring. I love summer. I really enjoy those seasons. And I'm so happy that we are back here again, that things are warming up very, very nicely. I'm so grateful that we've stepped into a new season. Also grateful that this is the last episode of this season, and I am grateful because I have walked through this season, learned so much, and it's time to close this season 5 and look forward to season 6, which I am definitely looking forward to. I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you, thank you, thank you. You have been a loyal, faithful listener from 2022 when I started the podcast. Thank you so much. If you at some point or another stopped and then you picked up again, thank you as well. If you are somebody that started listening recently, thank you, thank you, thank you. If you found the podcast last year, I'm so happy that you're here. Whenever you joined this community, that you joined this journey, thank you so much. I appreciate it. It means so, so much to me when you choose to take time from your day to listen to the podcast, whether you are doing it when you're cleaning, when you are on your lunch break, when you are in your listening to podcasts zone, whenever it is, whatever it is you would be doing, even if you've just got the podcast on in the background, because I know some people will put podcasts on and just want to have some background noise. Thank you. You have shared the podcast. If you have started a conversation based on a topic that I was talking about, thank you. I really, 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 really want this podcast to be an educational tool. I want it to be helpful to whoever decides to listen to it. I want the information that you get to be information that you can apply in your own life. I would like for it to prompt you to ask yourself some questions, to prompt you to wonder, to prompt you to learn, unlearn, relearn. So, yeah, I just want to continue to create a space that will encourage whoever's listening to it to really interrogate their own thoughts, to pick up on some new information, to be educated, you know what I'm saying? So that's something that I really felt that I've done in this season specifically, and not just in what I've been sharing, but in what I've been learning for myself. Yo, since I've started this podcast, I have changed so much, I have grown so much, and I have learned so much. And it's great to have been able to, and to continue being able to share that on the podcast and feel safe enough to do that. This is definitely a space that feels safe enough to do that. And each and every one of you that listen, you contribute to that. So, yeah, if you found the podcast on TikTok, if you found the podcast on YouTube, because it's on YouTube now, if someone told you about this podcast, thank you again for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I really wanted to close off this season, go out with a bang, if I might put it that way, if I might say so myself. I wanted to talk about the beauty of obedience. Like I said, I have changed so much, I have grown so much, and I have shared a lot of that on the podcast, including my spiritual growth, my strengthening of my faith, my closeness and intimate relationship with God that I really started working on towards the end of last year. And we are moving towards the end of this year, and it's almost a year that I've really been focusing and being intentional about my spiritual maturity, emotional maturity, my mental maturity, just healing through various things that I experienced throughout my childhood, teenage years, and young adulthood years. And it has been just incredible to look back and see how different of a person I was a year ago, 2 years ago, and who I am now. I'm just in complete awe, and all of the glory, all of the honor goes to the Lord, because He has changed my life. He has turned my life around, and in the process, I have much about being obedient and about the beauty that lies in that. And so much has just been revealed to me. I have come into a different kind of an understanding about life and about the importance of being obedient in this life. Being obedient to God, being obedient to what He's calling me to do, being obedient to the purpose that He has set before me in the specific way that He sets it before me in this season of my life. I feel like my purpose is completely different than it was in the previous season, and I feel like it will be different in the next season. And you know what? The thing with purpose is that it just doesn't stay the same. One thing that I've realized, it changes. God changes it, and that's why when He says move, we're done here, you need to be able to move. Get up and move. And that essentially is obedience. Even though the purpose might change around, you've got to be obedient the same way all the time, in all of the ways. That's the one thing that's going to stay constant. That's the one thing that has to stay constant. Life is going to change. Things are going to look different at different times. But I've realized that one thing that needs to stay the same is obedience. And so I really just wanted to talk about how beautiful it can be to obey God, how beautiful it can be to just move with Him, to be led by Him, and just how important it is and how important it has been for me in this place that I'm in my life, that I find myself in. So I've spent the last I'm going to say the last 3 years, I've mentioned this before, changing quite a lot, and understandably so. You know, when you turn 25, something starts to click. Something starts to click. I'm 28 now. I'm going to be turning 29 in December. And looking back, I realized that when I turned 25, that thing where the brain is supposed to be fully developed now, it definitely happened for me. I was still obviously childlike in certain ways, still maturing, still unlearning certain things, still going through transitions. There were many things that I didn't understand, many things that I was yet to learn about. But on the most part, my transitionary period started 3 years ago. When I turned 25, things started to look a little bit different. I was asking different questions. I wanted more. And it was just a thing. I couldn't even tell you what it is that I wanted. I just knew that I wanted more. And obviously, as time went on and turned 26, and then I turned 27, and then I turned 28, the more started to make sense. And last year, when I was 27, just about to turn 28 or 27, maybe like 3 months before turning 28, that thing, those things, they started to make more and more and more sense. And I said to myself, you know what? I can't do this alone. This is actually really hard. Life is not meant to be done alone for real. It's true that we need community, but then I realized that I also need God. I'm missing that intimacy with God. I I knew who God was through other people before. I didn't know him for myself, and so I realized that, you know what, that's the thing that's missing. That is really the big thing that I need to work on, my faith, my spiritual maturity. And so that's pretty much where it started for me, where it properly started, and the transition became even more serious. And I had to come face to face with many things that I had been running away from, that I didn't know existed, that I didn't know I needed to work on even. And you know what? It all came to the surface. And it was just me and God. And God carried me and He took care of me. And He showed me that He's always going to be there for me. Ride or die, that's God. My one, my best friend, my love, my confidant, that's the Lord. And in the process of all of that, I learned that the one thing that He's going to require from me is obedience. Now, I'm going to say that I struggled for long before I got this right. This past year, I have struggled with obedience. I have really, really, in every area of my life, really, I struggled with doing what God wanted me to do. And I was just questioning things. I was wondering all the time. I was trying to make sense of things all the time. I wouldn't just go where He would be sending me to go. It would be like pulling out a tooth with me. And there was no beauty in obedience. I didn't think that obedience could be beautiful. I just didn't think the way I think now. I was I wasn't 1 foot in, 1 foot out, but I definitely was. How do I put this? I 100% was struggling with that still. I was struggling with forgiveness when God would tell me that this is something you need to forgive, not necessarily forget, but forgive and move on from. This is not something that is for you. This is not something that I'm calling you to do. This is not for you. This you must move away from. It would always be why, but that's unfair. But, but. So I really, really battled with that for a long time. I mean, before, when I was living outside of God's will, I was not being obedient at all. I would do whatever I want whenever I wanted, feed my flesh, make myself happy. And then I came into relationship with God, and that was a big challenge for me, huge stumbling block where I couldn't just move and do as he would tell me to do. And then the deeper I got into the word and the closer I got to God along the way, I realized that as much as God is my confidant, my love, my father, my teacher, my friend, my best friend, God is also King of Kings. And respecting him is of utmost importance. And walking on the path, walking in the ways that he tells me to, that he asks of me, is a must. It's a given. It's not something that I get to pick and choose to do when I feel comfortable doing. It is going to be uncomfortable. It is going to challenge me, but I need to do it. When we say we are God-fearing, which is something that would always roll off of my tongue, even when I was living outside of God's will, because, that's just something that you're expected to say as a Christian, right? You're God-fearing. But when I sat down and I gave myself a chance to think about what God-fearing really means, I said to myself, if I say I fear God, I revere him, I see him as this great and one and only, then that means that I respect him. That means that I'm obedient to his instructions. But am I really? And like I said, as I went deeper into reading the Bible and really understanding what God is asking of me, the understanding part was also really, really difficult. But I realized that it's not optional. The thing with obedience, it's not something that you can choose, tick a box, not today, maybe later. I'm going to do it. I'm going there whether I like it or not, whether I feel like it or not. And when I started to look at it like that, and I started to look at my real life every day, challenges, experiences, moments, I realized that there's actually beauty in it. That's why I decided to title this episode The Beauty in Obedience. There's beauty in respecting God. There's beauty in going into the unknown, but feeling not afraid, feeling confident, feeling sure because I'm being led by God, because he said go there, knowing that he's been there before. He knows, he can see, he's seen, he's aware. And the beauty in that is that I'm going where I don't know where I'm going. I'm doing something that I'm not necessarily trained in, or I don't have a lot of practice in. But because of I trust God so much, because of I lean on him so much, because of he is the one that provides me with the support and he is my source of strength, I can do it. I'm going there, and that's so beautiful that I've reached that place, that I've been able to get to that place where I say I'm doing it not because I know what's going to happen, not because I know what the outcome is going to be, but because of I trust you so much. You are so intentional with me. You show me time and time again that I can do it, that I've got your back, that I will never leave nor forsake you. And that's just beautiful to me. And that's just phenomenal for me. There's a part in the book of Psalms that speaks about how God knows a chapter in the book of Psalms where God speaks about how he knows the number of the hairs on my head, on your head, that he knew me, he knew you when you were being formed in a special place in your mother's womb. That's really beautiful. God has been intentional about me, about you from day one. And he wants you to be just as intentional about him. And obedience is one way to do that. Going to a place, walking by faith and not by sight, is obedience. Doing, even when you don't know how you're going to do it, when you're going to do it, what's going to happen there, but saying, my God, he rides for me. He's got me. He is truly a father. He is solid. I'm going to do it. That's absolutely beautiful. And to get to a place like that, it takes a lot of intimacy with God, right? It takes a lot of intentionality with when it comes to your relationship with God. But when you allow yourself to go there, I'm telling you right now that you will be able to see the beauty in a moment that seems like it's just chaos and it's absolutely horrible. Also, something else with obedience is sometimes you're going to be met with some really difficult moments. You are going to be met with some very uncomfortable moments. Sometimes it's going to be like, what was the point of being obedient? Because all I'm experiencing is suffering. But again, it also says in the Bible that endurance, suffering is going to create endurance. It's going to create an ability to withstand things that you wouldn't be able to withstand if you didn't have the training, quote unquote. So, obedience, the fruits of it is that it shapes you so much, it changes you, it gives you a different perspective, and that's something else that I really like about that, and that's another beauty that I see in it. It can completely change how you see life and how you experience life, and it can give you an opportunity to just serve God with the purest of heart and not expecting a gift at the end of it. Serving God, and I think that's another thing with obedience, that when you open yourself to it more and more, is that you understand that you're not doing anything so that you can get anything in return. Serving God, serving His kingdom is a gift enough. That is a blessing enough. That is more than enough to give you peace. It gives me all of the peace in the world to do what God is instructing me to do what God has called me to do. Not because of I'm going to get a Ferrari at the end or there's a guaranteed 20 million rands, but because I am serving Him, and serving Him brings me great joy, and Him being happy makes me happy. Me being a part of something bigger than myself makes me happy, and being a part of God's kingdom, that's being a part of something that is far bigger than myself, that goes way beyond making myself feel good. So yeah, being obedient, walking with God, it's not easy. It's not always easy. It's rarely easy. But the fruits of it, they're worth it. How you feel, the peace, the joy, the love that ends up filling your heart, that makes it all worth it. I know that people will always say, I've heard this quite a lot, where people say Christians have a suffering mentality. Why is it that I have to suffer through things for my character to be shaped? Why is it that I don't want to suffer? I don't understand why is it that it must be like that? And I understand why a person could ask that question. I'm not at all going to mock or make it seem like people are ridiculous for asking that question. But also, it would require you, can be very difficult to explain to somebody who is living outside of God's will and who doesn't believe in God in the first place, why things like suffering need to happen and why God allows it. But I will say that in order for us to become the people that we need to become and to be selfless and serve the kingdom, or as selfless as possible as far as the human mind, the flesh would be able to go, in order for us to be completely selfless, in order for us to really show up for God and to serve Him, and like I said, have a mindset of this is bigger than me, there are things we need to walk through. It's the same as when athletes go and participate in the Olympics. They go through intense training, they go through periods where they are not seeing their family because they are working on getting into shape. They are on very strict, restrictive diets or eating plans. They have to change their lifestyle. They are not allowed to be out late at night. They can't party. Many don't drink for the time that they are training, don't drink alcohol for the time that they're training. It's the same. I think we should look at it as we are in preparation, but it's a constant preparation for us, because it's a constant battle. There are constant battles that we are fighting the flesh. You are fighting evil forces, attempts by the devil. We are, as Christians, you are constantly fighting temptations. So it is a constant battle, and you constantly need shaping and chiseling. And the thing with walking with Christ, being in the kingdom of God, is there is a time and there is a place for everything. And when you have truly immersed yourself in a relationship with the Lord, you will know that things don't last forever as well. So I don't look at suffering or at difficult moments as the be all and end all. Yes, I get frustrated. Yes, I get annoyed. Yes, I cry. I absolutely do cry. But I also remember that there is a time and a place for everything in the kingdom of God, and that I need to be obedient through it all, and that there is beauty in that obedience, that there is peace in that obedience. Peace is beautiful. There is love in that obedience. Love is very beautiful. There is happiness within that obedience. There is fulfillment and contentment. And for the first time in my life, I can positively say, for the very first time in my life, I am experiencing things like peace, fulfillment, contentment, not from things. Not from things. All of that comes from being in a relationship with God. I don't need to buy a necklace to feel content. I don't need to drink a glass of wine to feel good about myself. I don't need to wear a short skirt or a short dress to feel good about myself. Being in a relationship with God, knowing how much He loves me, knowing how He sees me, makes me feel good enough. It makes me feel content enough. His love fills me up. God's love fills me up. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful that choosing to walk with God, choosing to be shaped, to be changed, to be moved, choosing obedience has produced so many beautiful things for me. And seeing things and seeing life from a perspective of there is a time and place for everything has also given me an opportunity to walk through and endure things that I wouldn't have if I was outside of the will of God. If I was outside of the will of God, I would have made my own plan. I would have done things that I shouldn't have done, tried to move things around, try to fix things up on my own. But no, there is a time and a place for everything. And I think that's something else. I know for a fact that that's something else that obedience has shown me. It has given me an opportunity to see. I want to read from the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verses 1 to 8. And the title is There is a Time for Everything. I made a note here in my Bible. 2 notes. I said God is working, and I said God is so intentional. God is always intentional. God has always been intentional about you and me. God is always working. God has always been working. God will never stop working, even when it seems silent, even when it seems like things are not happening. I've realized that that's also the time where obedience is mandatory. It's very, very important. Obedience in perspective, obedience in action, obedience in words, obedience in intention, everything. So it says here that there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. So, there is a time for every single thing. Things come to pass, things do not stay the same. Sometimes the outcome is not going to be what you want, it won't be what you like. But when you live within the will of God, that's something that you also need to accept. It's something that you need to understand, that God's plans have always been better than yours ever will be. It says in Proverbs that we might make the plans, but God is the one who chooses. He chooses what will happen, He chooses how it will happen, and He chooses when it will happen. All you need to do is work on your faith, work on what you know to be true about God, that He loves you, that He cares for you, that He's got your back, and just understand that there is a time for everything. And that's something that I've had to understand in this transition that I've been going through, that is almost fully coming full circle, I want to say. I don't know if I used the right phrase there, but it feels like it's coming full circle, because when I started in the time that I started at, where I felt like, okay, there are changes happening, and I can see them, and I can see that there are things I need to work towards. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't understand why. I did not know what to lean against. And now all of my weight is on God. All of who I am is in Christ. I see myself through God. My identity lies in the Lord. It's no longer in things or other people, or where I went to school, who I went to school with, where I've traveled to, how I speak, how many languages I can speak, my accent. It's about none of those things. It's all about God, and that's where my identity lies, and it has affected and continues to affect or impact my life positively. Living that way, seeing myself that way, it affects and impacts why I do certain things, how I do certain things. It motivates my thoughts, my actions, my lifestyle. So yeah, true that there is a time for everything, because that time that I was that person, that was that time for this, and now is the time for this. But true also that obedience is so important. Obedience is beautiful. And especially when you see life as moving in seasons, you will understand that you need to be obedient nonetheless. That shouldn't change, and that it will be worth it at the end of the day. So if you're someone that is experiencing a not knowing what's happening, you don't understand whether you're coming or you're going, you're not sure what's happening with your career, with your finances, you aren't sure what's happening with your emotional well-being, your mental well-being, I want to encourage you to take all of that to God, to ask Him for direction, and to understand that you are going to be in a place where you are constantly being challenged to grow, to change. But it's really up to you to devote yourself to that growth, to that change, to devote yourself to being obedient, to devote yourself to choosing to see life as something that moves in seasons, and to devote yourself to being exactly who God is needing you to be. Obedience can be so beautiful, guys. Obedience is beautiful. When God is asking you to stay focused, to stick to this thing, hear His voice, be able to discern between what He wants from you and what He's saying you should do and what He's saying you should stay away from. And also remember something else that I saw on a video yesterday, that there's this thing that people always say, that when something is meant for you, it won't miss you. Yes, it will. It will absolutely miss you when you don't choose to be obedient and you are constantly setting yourself back. You are being disobedient when God is telling you to sit down, because this is now the quiet time in your life, or you are in a season of rest, and you want to work. Take all the opportunities that you are being offered. Wear yourself out because you are in the mindset, or you are of the belief that you need to constantly work, make money, put it away. Work, make money, put it away. Work, make money, put it away. And that's not how it works. There is a time for everything, as I read in Ecclesiastes. Some seasons are for quiet and some are for work. Some seasons are for love and some are for you to be on your own and not be in a romantic relationship. you not to be super close and have best friends that you're always visiting. Sometimes God has deployed you to a certain place and you need to walk that journey on your own. It is not always going to be you and somebody else, you and other people. In Second Kings, there is a story about Elisha and Elijah. Elijah was Elisha's teacher, and he walked with him for a long time. He was guiding him, and then God took Elijah away. He took him up to heaven, and Elisha needed to be on his own and apply himself. That's how life is sometimes. Sometimes God says, this person has taught you, this opportunity has reached its end. This is done now. We are moving into a different phase. You need to be obedient, or else the thing that is meant for you is going to completely miss you. It's going to miss you. It's going to slip right out of your hands. So be careful. See the beauty in being obedient. See the beauty in the rest. See the beauty in the work. See the beauty in the busyness. See the beauty in the quiet. See the beauty in the love, and see the beauty in the singleness. Don't rush for things to be different. Don't rush to put yourself first all the time. It's not always going to be about you. Especially if you've put God at the center of your heart, at the center of your life. Sometimes it's going to be about him. It's supposed to be about him all the time. We have an issue as human beings of making it about us when it shouldn't be about you, when it should be about God, period. So yeah, if you are in a time in your life where there's change going on, go to God. You don't know what to do, go to God, take it to him, and he will definitely lead and guide you. Keep on praying, keep on having faith, keep on believing in God for the thing that he said he's going to do for you, because one thing about him, he is not going to disappoint you. And just keep on being obedient. Keep on being obedient. I know I'm going to do my best. This is about to be a season, a time of rest for me. I'm going to take 3 weeks off to rest, recuperate, and prepare myself for season 6. Thank you so much again, guys, for your support. This is definitely where we are ending this week's episode. I really appreciate how much you have been here throughout the season. You have 20 episodes, including this one, to listen to whilst I am gone. No new uploads for the next 3 weeks on YouTube, on TikTok, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts. But in the meantime, you can go back, listen to all 5 seasons, because there are 5 seasons of the podcast up on all of the listening platforms. A Cupful is also on TikTok. I won't be posting on there either, obviously, because I'm going to be going on a short hiatus, a little break. But it is on TikTok as well. If you want to share your thoughts, if you have anything that you would like to share with me via DM, you can do that. I am so grateful. Again, thank you. My heart is overflowing. I look forward to the next season. I also look forward to this time of rest. Don't forget that you should also lean into the time of rest when God has given you a time of rest. Have a lovely remainder of this week. Rest when you need to, work when you need to. Be good to yourself. Be good to yourself. Be obedient to what you are being called to do. And most importantly, don't forget to keep doing the things that fill your cup.